one of the books that I read during this journey is In the Absence of the Sacred of Jerry Mander, and he has one chapter there called Form Equals Content. How we tend to see forms, in this case technology, different technological solution, as neutral. It's similar to what they do with meat-based dishes. They would call it schnitzel. And I remember being a kid, I actually, some of my years as a kid were studying in a kibbutz and eating communally. And the kids don't know that it's meat. They think it's schnitzel. It has this cute, unobstructive kind of name. It's not called, carcasses or or pgarim. How do you say? How do you say pgarim? Carcasses? It says carcasses. Nice. So technology, and then the argument is that if we only learn how to use technology right, if we only learn how to put the right programming on television, and take out the commercials and limit our time on television, all these things, then everything will be fine. The conclusion that author has is that it's never neutral. It never was neutral. Sometimes there are things that are discovered later about it, but many times it's predicted. And many times things are marketed to us, touching our most basic needs of security, love, and then we go and run and get these things, and it never achieves those things that promise, but what it does get is further control on our lives. A cell phone is a great example. But in that book that was written before there were cell phones, it actually talks about regular phones and how pretty much immediately after the regular phones appeared, skyscrapers appeared. And before that, it was just didn't make sense to go up and down so many stories in the building, and it allowed transnational corporations to have much further reach because of this ability to control further areas with telephone. That's all you need to be able to control your own puppet over there. So these are things that were not talked about when the first phones were marketed. They're marketed to lonely wives in their farmhouses, staying alone with the children. And what happens if there's an emergency? Who can they call? Somebody they can call the doctor. That's how it was marketed. And cell phones were also marketed the same way, even though they're mostly used for business, for making people work harder. So it also has to do with diet. My diet has evolved over the years, and it's still evolving, and I noticed that most of the diet changes are difficult in the same way that any addiction is difficult. And it actually was proven with rats that junk food, whatever that means, junk food, but food that is not nutritious, let's say, creates in the brain the same process as heroin or cocaine. It's a dopamine that's being released in the brain, and you need more and more of this junk in order to feel that effect. And the rats actually starve themselves for 2 weeks before they actually start eating nutritious food again. So it's knowing our weaknesses as a culture, as a human beings, knowing this is one of the first steps that an alcoholic has to do. I think it's actually the first step in the 12-step system, is to acknowledge that there's something bigger than me here and I need help. So it goes together with the form equals content, is knowing that when we have these forms available, when we have cell phones, there's no using it just for emergencies. We can't, as a culture. We have a limit. When we have these things available, it's like having for an alcoholist, having the alcohol right in the cupboard. So I noticed that sometimes I can limit myself from a place of doing the right thing, or of a place of negativity. I don't want this, it's not good for me. And when I do it from that place, very soon I feel a sense of contraction and basically just a sense of being less alive. So when you put a group of people into a prison environment, you can only expect so much. You can only expect so much from the people, even if they practice the most highest level of self-discipline, meditate every morning. What happens within of days? I mean, that experiment was supposed to be 2 weeks, and they cut it after a few days because the prisoners became so sadistic. The wardens became so sadistic, and the prisoners were obedient. It was just really violent environment. So when I don't own a car, but on the rare occasion I borrow one or use one, I can just see how my brain operates differently. It's subtle. It's subtle, but this pace of responding to these signals, I can see I'm in a more aggressive state. If I'm in a city, walking in a street, and everybody's marching, there's noises and there's smells, and it puts me in a different state of being. And if I'm under a tree, it puts me in a different state of being. If I have bars next to me, it's different when I don't have bars. So I noticed that there's some limits that I put on myself, and they don't really look at limits because it's not really a process. It's like I identify it as something that sounds right, and I'm just going to apply it to myself. And then very quickly I have this sense of liberation and freedom, and that I have more than I had before. So this is a lot of what I'm after, is to myself. How do I apply these things to myself? What other things can I choose that are equal to the form, not to the content? So what happens if the form I apply to a relationship is a form of you are mine, I'm yours, we are here forever? What content is that more likely to create in the same way that the prison environment can create? Yes. What happens when my diet is based on seeds? Grain and legumes and seeds of food. And what happens when my diet is based on fruit and leaves? How does that, not just what it does to me, but how does my garden look like? And how much water does my garden need? And how easy it is for me to be self-sufficient. So many communities we visited aspire to self-sufficiency. It's one of their ideals, and they barely touched 20%. I would say that will be a good case. And that's mostly because their diet is based on grains in the form of meat. I mean, it's animals that ate grains. And it's very intensive to grow grains. But in ecoforest, where we visited in Spain, the diet is based on fruit and leaves. And fruit is, you plant a tree and you have oranges every year without much work. And leaves is something that just grows very immediately, and you don't actually pull out the whole plant. You just take the leaves, and actually it goes to seed, and you let the seeds go on the ground and go again to leaves. So for me, I tell people I eat 70% things that I pick myself, and people say, "Wow, that's a lot." I'm not a permaculture. I do know a lot of the permaculture principles, but it's not something that I put a lot of my energy into. I'm a lazy gardener, but because my diet is adjusted to more easy things to grow, then it's very easy for me. It's not out of self-discipline. Okay, and I decide I have to eat 70% of my diet. It's a form, and then the content is 70% of the diet, at least, is something I pick myself. This is a great sense of liberation, because a lot of people are worried that they won't have what they need. And to know that I can subsist on what there is and grows freely around, and even just the excess or the things that fall on the ground, and not just survive but thrive and be happy and enjoy it like the best food ever. I appreciate that.
You feel that you do.
So I noticed that many communities they came up with the best form they can come up. And then they don't want to change that form. And they just hope that the content will change. And they try all kind of meetings and rules. And it never works out in the long run, because the form is so, it's a form, and you can only create one shape of that form. So I'm really excited when I hear about, and when I visited communities that experiment with the form. I know, like for example, in the Neot Smadar, they have a habit of switching houses. not staying for too long in the same house. And what does that do? And they do it as an experimental thing, and then they talk about it, and they see that it does well for them, so they keep that habit, and then they try different things. I know that when I visited in Neot Madal, I had to run out of the dining room right after the meal because there was just free box of cigarettes and everybody would go and smoke. But it stopped, and so there's some change that happened, and that's a good sign, because many of the communities we visited, the older ones, seemed like, when I looked at the picture books and heard the stories, that the progress only happened for so far, and then it just kind of stalls there, and it's not necessarily sustainable where it stalls. It's something it's maybe comfortable for the veterans of the community that are a little tired, but it doesn't work for the younger people or for the children. And they have these rules there that are not liberating rules. That I visited a community that has a rule that you have to keep a ratio of 1 child to 5 adults, which means that there's a waiting list of parents who want to have children in the community, and families from outside like us could never join, which is fine. And I understand also the importance of knowing what's the carrying capacity of the land or the community, and not just have children out of tune, or what's the limit. But it seemed like the tribal people, which are the most egalitarian way that ever existed so far, no matter how many communities of these there are, they found a way to live this way without imposing these limits in that contracting way. It seems like they found a way of life that maintains the number of the population. I can see how, when I have one daughter, and we hitchhike together. We don't have a car. She's unschooled, so she is integrated into the daily life, and she takes her amount of attention, and she gives the attention, and she's here. That having another kid in my head, now I'm verbally processing it, but having another kid means another kid to hitchhike with in my head, or another kid to have here. And it seems like if I would have my excessive high-tech job and a big house with rooms, and the kid would go to school, and I just see the kids in the afternoon or in the weekends, that I will be less in tune with what the limits are, because the system is so complex. My salary comes from this company, which is a corporation in California. My food comes from here. The kids go to school where they learn these things that are not necessarily useful to them, and it's just a very complex system that creates this attachment from nature and what the carrying capacity is. So I would really like to find these forms that work, and this is something that's very interesting for me, if it's in a community or not. How do people forgive each other? What is a form that help people really forgive each other, or what's forms that prevent most conflict? For example, they discover that most couples fight after dark. Okay? After dark. Now they can go to all kind of workshops of how to communicate better and take responsibility on their feelings, and it's all important. But they can also just go to sleep when the sun goes down, and bypass that. This is again we leave the lights on the same way we do with the chicken coops. The chicken coops, they leave the light on because then the chicken lay more eggs. It makes us more active. So we make artificial time to be awake and see each other. We skip. I noticed on our trips, and I'm going to come to the trips pretty soon, but on our trips we spend time awake in the dark, especially in the winter when the days are short and 5 o'clock it's dark. We don't go to sleep at 5, but we do go into a horizontal position at 5, and we look at the stars, and lying down and looking at the stars creates a very different feeling and content than being in a fluorescented light, even though the compact fluorescent is more ecological or whatever, but being in a fluorescent light and seeing each other and using still the eyes as a main sensual organ, or even just sitting around a fire and looking at the fire. I'm not judging it right now, but it creates different content than looking at the stars and looking at the sky, or snuggling against each other because it's cold and there's no fire. Just create something else. So